That's that's funny. I was listening to the same program and I thought the hero looked a lot like me. And therein lies the magic. Tens of thousands of people out there listening, each envisioning their own motion picture of the mind. And that is what we give our audience, Miss Roberts. We give them dreams. We give them towers and landscapes, secrets and revelations. We give them a warm hearth in the dark or a cold shiver up the spine. And we do it all here, live, on a sparest of thread thin budgets with a troupe of actors who, underpaid and under rehearsed and overwhelmed, have yet to learn this simply cannot be done. I'm Chris Spivey.
And I'm Eddie Webb.
And today we're going to talk about one of my favorite shows, so I am unabashedly biased. Remember When? Hello, listeners. Welcome to our program on Remember When today. It's a quaint little thing. We're both sitting by the fire, radio in the background, feeling very much in our 1930s.
Get to put on our radio voices and talk like this all the time.
I don't think you appreciate my smooth voice, Eddie. How about, what about this one? Hey, what's going on, Eddie?
You said, hey, and all I could think of is that bit from Into the Spider-Verse where he puts a hand on their shoulder and goes, hey. And he gets his hand stuck in her hair.
All right. So in case people don't remember, this is our whatever the fuck we want to do run. And I think I mentioned Remember When to you 5 years ago?
Yeah, like very early on. You're like, we should watch this show. And I was like, I don't know what it is. And then I couldn't find it online. And so you gave me a link to downloads for like the first season. And I remember watching a couple episodes and really liking it. But we could just never find a run that made sense for it. And so it's been on the sheet for like ever, right? Like, hey, we'll eventually get to this. But yeah, it's such a interesting little program that doesn't fit into any easy categories. So I'm glad we're actually doing this kind of whatever the hell we want run, because it's allowing us to go into these little corners. And this is one of them. I figured, as soon as we talked about this, I figured you were going to want to watch this one.
So, funnily enough, it was on the Patreon feed too for a while. I was like, no, it can't quite fit in because we did like a blaxploitation run for a while. Then we did some other different runs that didn't quite fit in there. And then I almost made a specific like Hollywood-esque run where it would have been Remember When, Radioland Murders, My Favorite Year, and like one other thing tucked in there to see if that worked. And even that didn't feel quite right.
No, because it's a very different tone to those other things. I mean, I remember we even talked at one point of like a shows about media, and like it was briefly around, but like this Sports Night, maybe Frasier, stuff like that, you know.
Yeah.
But even then, like, this didn't quite fit that either. So like that's one of the things that's interesting about this show is that even from the couple episodes I watched, I was like, this is really hard to quantify in a very interesting way.
And one of the big things about me, I think it may have come up sometime during the podcast, is that I love the golden age of radio. It is something I've always been fascinated with, even since I was a little kid. And I actually had little cassette tapes. Okay, for kids that don't know what a cassette tape is, a cassette tape is, you would have like a little boom box, we'd even call them sometimes, and you'd have this little bitty tape that could record maybe 90 minutes of stuff, and it's all audio. Yep. And then you put it in, and it would play. Long story short, to stop being insulting to like other people, and I'd had a whole bunch of like radio shows from back then. Some of them are not ones that I was overly fond of, but I still love the medium itself, because my grandmother loved the Amos and Andy sort of shows, which did not resonate well with me.
Right. For reasons that should be obvious if you know anything about that show. If not, look it up, and then it should be immediately obvious.
Yeah. And since then, I sort of kept looking into it more and more. and I still have a fascination with it. It's one of the reasons that I love writing in the 20s to the 40s, because I can do some focus on radios. And even in Harlem Unbound, one of the Harlem Hellfighters scenario has someone that does a radio operator stuff and is leaning into something. Because I had an idea once to like expand that out into something else that would have moved into the 30s, but it hasn't happened yet. But you never know.
Nice.
Maybe I'll do it.
I like it. And like, it's one of the interesting things about moving here to the UK is that radio drama tradition never went away.
Yeah.
It's muted, right? It's not nearly as strong as it used to be, but it's still around. Like one of the longest running soaps here in the UK is called The Archers. It's been a radio soap for like decades, you know. And I just posted online recently about this. Radio 4 has regular episodic dramas, and they've been putting it all into podcast feeds, which is great, called Limelight. And there's a couple different. There's Drama of the Week, which is much more the kind of kitchen sinks realistic drama. Limelight's the slightly more thriller, sci-fi, fantasy-ish stuff. So that's one I'm definitely more listening to. And there's actually a recent outcry because they've recently shut down what they call long wave translations or transmission, which basically means that there's no longer radio waves broadcasting any of the BBC radio stuff. It's all digital now. And there's a small outcry about that, but like there's been some steady budget cuts at the BBC, and one of them has been they tried to take some strong cuts of the dramatic program. And so there's been some outrage about that, and there's been some petitions, and then that's kind of changed course still around. But like the point is like this is something that's still strong here specifically. Because like you, I also love audio drama. I mean, we're both huge fans of Big Finish, for example, right?
Yeah.
And so like I was the creative director for an interactive audio drama company for a couple of years. So this is a art form that and I know we both really love. And I also in my case it was CDs, but I would get CDs from the library of like old detective shows and The Shadow and stuff like that. In their crackly, badly compressed glory, you know.
Funnily enough, since you mentioned Big Finish, I'll give a slight tangent. And in the Discord recently, I even dropped the Navy Lark, which was a long-running audio drama that featured our favorite Third Doctor, John Pertwee, in it.
Right. As opposed to our second favorite Third Doctor, which is the guy currently playing it.
Well, technically, couldn't Peter Cushing's Doctor have been a version of the Third Doctor?
No, Peter Cushing's Doctor is technically a version of the first Doctor.
So he does not look anything like the fugitive Doctor, Eddie.
Well, you know, everything got whitewashed in the 60s.
Sons of bitches. Man.
It's funny you mention that because I'm actually rewatching the Peter Cushing movie specifically for a essay I'm writing. So,
I bet you're going to recommend we watch one of those soon. I could tell. By the look on Eddie's face, there's like a little twinkle in his eye right now.
I have not done so. So I can either confirm or deny that.
I'm going to have to double check this, like whatever the fuck we want to run list now and see if there's a Peter Cushing Doctor Who on there. All right. Well, we're here to talk about Remember When. Yes. This was AMC's first scripted television show because they wanted something to accent all the movies and everything else they were playing back then. And they wanted to feel vintage how their shows did. So that was one of the reasons they went for a 1930s radio show.
So I've seen that qualifier a few times. I assume then that AMC had like news shows and other shows like that before this one.
I think they had like one or two shows. I'm trying to remember specifically because I watched this live when it aired, and I was also had to deal with much how they did with Twin Peaks. They would move around when Twin Peaks would air. They would move around when Remember When it would air. And sometimes it would play, sometimes it wouldn't. And I'd be there with my VCR. For the kids don't know, the VCR is a more primitive device that you could use to record things on your television. And you had to use a VCR tape. Notice the trend of tapes in my stories because I'm an old man. And you put it in and record for like, I want to say 90 minutes, or you could put it on the EP version where it could record for like 6 hours, but really shitty quality.
It's weird to keep mispronouncing Betamax so badly, but you know, whatever.
And as I mentioned before, growing up really poor, I would put them on LP, and LP would give you like maybe 3 hours. So it was longer than like the 90 minutes times, but not as long as 6 hours, but the quality was slightly better.
Yeah, the eternal balance of like, if I go long play or super long play, I can get more episodes on here, but they will look like garbage.
Yeah.
You know, so but I can't afford more tapes. So which do I do?
And for anyone that's curious, if VCR tapes still could survive and exist, they do. In fact, I have several Doctor Who's that I recorded because in Alabama they only showed on PBS. They're all Tom Bakers because that's all they really showed in Alabama.
Right.
I have some Tom Bakers on VHS that I recorded a lot decades ago.
Nice.
When I still lived in my house. Wow. And I have one functioning VCR player.
So there has been an interesting, we're way off topic again. But old media, so
Shocked,
that's somewhat relevant.
Shocked.
I have seen interesting trends on archive.org of people who are archiving exactly those kinds of tapes, VHS tapes. Um, Partially to show, because I think a lot of us realize that sometimes things are edited when they go to DVD or streaming release, and so to kind of show how they're originally broadcast, but also just to kind of show how television looked in context. Like you see, like the commercial breaks in context, all the bumpers and ads, and here's what's coming up, kind of continuity announcements. And so I occasionally poke around there out of curiosity to see, like, what did a Doctor Who episode look like at a Boston PBS station, as a random example. It's like, it's just fascinating to see those little differences.
You get a lot of donation drives that would pop up.
Right.
And instead of commercials, hello, would you help fund PBS? And if you didn't, you definitely should, because now they need it even more than before if you live in the States, if it's even still possible.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
We have the BBC, so, which is a whole separate set of problems.
All right, we're not here to talk about that. I'm going to go back to talking about Remember When, although all this is making us very nostalgic. So funny that it's called Remember When. Look at that. Look at that segue and link directly back to the show.
Because this is a visual pun, if you're not looking at it, the reason why it's Remember When, it's WENN, which is the radio station's call letters. So that's why it's a pun, is that remember when, as do you remember this radio station, as well as do you remember when, because it's an older show.
And I'm jumping around a little bit for the history, but we're all over the place as always, which is why people come to listen to us. Why they come to sit by our fireside chats as we have them with our 1930s radio in the background playing, a warm brandy in hand, But the show originally was supposed, I will not jump to the end yet. I'll pull it back. Rupert Holmes was the creator and writer of the series. He also did the music. Like that opening theme song and everything that you hear is by Rupert Holmes.
Oh, nice.
And it's always incredibly nice and soothing as soon as it starts. And one of the things that Holmes cites is yours truly, Johnny Dollar, and some other radio shows from the 30s for his specific influences for the show.
It's funny. Johnny Dollar is one of those shows that, like, if you are an old time radio aficionado, you've probably heard of, but otherwise you have no fucking idea what it is, right? It's those weirdly influential shows in a very specific niche of media nerd.
Or did you just acknowledge that we're media nerds? Is that what we're doing now?
We have done several years of podcast. We talk about media every week. I think that was kind of a given, my friend.
Yeah, but you stated it. You're all like, "Whoa, media nerd." One of the other joys that he had for the show is that he would take different formats of different radio shows and like incorporate those in different episodes. And one of the later seasons, for something that didn't happen, there was going to be like an homage to the Maltese Falcon, also with two characters.
Okay.
That would have been in the canceled fifth season, or possibly like a movie that was supposed to have happened.
Oh, a movie would have been cool.
Yeah. Taking a step back, Mr. Foley, is, in my opinion, like one of the VIPs of the entire series, who never says a line throughout the entire series. It is a running gag. It is beautifully executed all the time. And his name, of course, is sort of a shout out to Foley artist. But
Right.
the concept of the Foley artist that doesn't say anything first on a radio show, perfect.
I did not realize that was a shtick until about the 3rd episode that we watched for this. And I was like, "Oh, this is a gag. I get it." And then by the 4th episode, I realized they were leaning into having fun with the gag, because if you have a silent character, it starts off that like just you know how it should be done is like you don't realize this character's silent. Eventually, people ask questions of silent character and they answer in ways that are nothing. But eventually, especially for a sitcom, you have to find increasingly implausible ways as to why the silent character's not actually talking. And it does seem like by the end of season 1, they were starting to recognize this is a source of comedy in and of itself.
I think it was written like that because I'm giving
Right, yeah.
Holmes a lot of credit from how it was executed.
Oh, yeah, totally. And it's doubly funny because it's an all audio medium that they're talking about, and so to have a character that doesn't have speaking lines is also funny for on a different metatextual level.
And I'm not sure if it was mentioned in these episodes, but if you watch it, then you have a lot of the other characters talk about how Mr. Foley won't stop talking ad nauseum. So it's even more reinforcing that balance that we don't ever get to hear it. But it's like,
it's the Morn gag in Deep Space Nine, right? It's the exact same thing.
Yes.
Which I love.
Part of the problem with me doing this is I know the show so well. Even like for some of the notes for the recap for the first episode, I was trying to figure out how I wanted to recap it. So there's a big blank. And Eddie today was like, aren't you in your job, man? Like, this is your job. Why is there nothing there? It's like, this didn't happen.
I mean, to be fair, like at one point when I was doing the Beast Wars run, my notes were just Eddie will remember some shit and talk here, but eventually I had to put some notes in because I had a couple things I wanted to make sure I remembered to talk about. But yeah, so I feel you.
The series was also shot on film rather than videotape to sort of help achieve that visual atmosphere of the old classics from the 40s movies. Was one of the other big choices they made.
Which is frustrating on one level because I have, they couldn't know it at the time, but like we've learned since then that Blu-ray, we do a Blu-ray improvement of the original media. It's way better if you have film stock as opposed to videotape to upscale from. And so, like, if that was still around, they could have done an amazing Blu-ray release of this show. But of course, this show barely existed in a reasonable concept. Like, apparently, AMC just started streaming it again like a few years ago.
All right, so I was going to build up to that. I was building like a story, Eddie, but Eddie said,
apologies.
Eddie said, "Fuck your story." So essentially,
so like every time I talk, right? Got it. Eddie, explain this thing. Eddie.
So the show had run for 4 seasons. They also had like a micro budget, and part of the things for having a micro budget is much like how Michael Dick Straczynski did. They wrote in back doors for people to leave the series. So you had cast members who would leave and they would replace them with other cast members, but they'd also bring cast members back if the other stuff didn't work out. For instance, in the show, we noticed that Victor leaves for a while, but then Victor sort of falls back up. Stuff like that. I'm mentioning that specifically to talk about the budget, how they shot everything in like 4 days for like the entire series, to say that by the 4th season, they'd gotten a lot of awards and everything else. But AMC was being very finicky about giving them the 5th season. They're like, well, we'll give you another season, but we want like your episode lengths to drop down to about 22 minutes instead of the 27, 28 minutes. Which the 27, 28 minutes let them add more scripts and characters and subplots and everything else. And they wanted a lighter tone because season 3 gets a little darker from everything. And eventually they were going to drop it to 8 episodes and maybe 4, then maybe a movie. And Rupert Holmes said, yeah, I'll do all that. And they agreed. And Rupert Holmes leaves to go do, like, I want to say a play about Goosebumps or something on the road.
Okay.
Then AMC's new management cancels the series.
Oh, jeez.
And Rupert Holmes finds out from the very rabid fan base, is that, do you know that the show is canceled? Why is the show canceled? And that's how some of the cast found out, because AMC didn't tell them that they'd canceled it.
Wow.
Because they wanted to do away with anything. The new management, from my understanding, wanted to do away with anything that felt old-timey. They wanted new, younger, hipper viewers.
American movie classics.
Yes. Yeah.
Well,
And that's when you got a lot more commercials and things like that on AMC that didn't used to be there.
so that makes sense in the sense that I remember like so cable takes off like early 90s. It becomes really big. I mean, it was around since the 80s, but like it really starts to take off in the 90s. You know, more channels are created. Um, and if I'm doing math correctly, this has been around the time where AMC, like a lot of other cable networks, was like, we can't just keep buying shows from other people and playing them. We need to make our own stuff, right? But I remember the early 2000s was a lot of networks, which were very meant to be very specialized, all try to become much more general. Similarly, around this time period, I remember TNN. Originally was the Nashville network, right? It was basically here is the country music version of MTV, and then they tried to have like wrestling and drag racing and shit, and it's just like, what happened to your identity as a network, right? Um,
Like when Sci-Fi became Sci-Fi and they put on
Siffy, yep,
wrestling and
yes,
other sports related things for geeks.
yeah. It's amusing because both those wrestling references were actually the same organization, ECW. Started off on TNN, the show got canceled. WWE bought them, and they started putting it on Sci-Fi. So it's like ECW was just burdened with being put on networks that shouldn't fucking have wrestling on it. Um,
Yeah.
but like, yeah, so yeah, there was this
Unless it's
weird.
alien wrestling.
There was a zombie in the very first episode, but that's only neither nor there. Uh, but like, yeah, it was later on. Some of those networks kind of changed direction back, right? Or evolved into a new identity that made sense. HBO, for example, evolved into a very different network at the end than it was 20 years previously. Um, but I had forgotten until we had this conversation that AMC was one of those. Because in my head, it was always just the the network that played older movies and really talked about them. But I realized that they stopped doing that, and then Ted Turner saw that they had left a gap in the market, and so he started putting out Turner Movie Classics, TMC.
Yeah.
And so they kind of started doing stuff that AMC was doing and got more cachet out of it, which is weird.
And because the big thing when Ellen did that, there was like a host at the time, I think Bob Dorian, who was an older gentleman. They also who guest starred on Remember When some, but they
Oh,
also sort of like let him go out of his contract. They canceled Remember When, and then they were going to focus on a brand new show called The Lot that dealt with like 1930s Hollywood with younger, prettier, hipper people. I think that show ran maybe 13 episodes.
right, right.
And is even harder to find than Remember When. But one of the things they actively did is they essentially buried Remember When for decades. Like the show doesn't exist, and if not for the rabid fan base who I had made a specific point of talking about video recording because fans recorded the episodes and then they put them on the computer, and then there was like fan groups that would share the episodes in because there was nowhere else to find them at
Right.
all. Like they did not exist. I want to say it was maybe 4 years ago that AMC eventually said, "All right, we'll start streaming them again for people," because there was such an outcry for it. But otherwise, no. And after the show was canceled, Rupert Holmes tried to get like a musical version of the show up and running with the cast, but that didn't really go anywhere. And then people just got busy and they went about their other different ways. But the show itself was so well loved that like it had Broadway actresses and actors would come and be on the different episodes of the show.
Mm-hmm.
When you notice, I think one of the episodes, Hillary specifically mentions Grace Cavendish as her rival from like her play of Rivals, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a throwaway gag. There's an episode where she shows up. She's
Oh,
a
wow.
love interest for Victor, but she's also the Broadway legend Patty LuPone.
Oh,
And they've
oh,
had
okay.
Betty Buckley on the show. I think Jason Alexander showed up on the show. For us, Arthur Dent showed up on the show at like the second season somewhere
Oh,
as a
wow.
director.
Nice.
So micro budget, people working super hard to make something well received by like critics and everything else, still canceled because it wasn't hip enough.
So I mean, it's fascinating because like it sounds like AMC accidentally rediscovered the BBC/ITV model from like the 70s, you know, which is get have a little bit of budget, but get really fantastic writers who are passionate about the material and actors who are passionate about material, and just make really strong, compelling television because you have such a limitation because of all the logistic constraints you have. And like it's interesting watching this show, like most everything takes place on one set of sets, which is just the WENN offices. So I mean, once you build those sets, you're more or less, everything else is just scripts and stage setting at that point. So I mean, I could see why the budgets were very, very, very tight because they had these sets. Even other set based comedies usually will have episodes that go outside the set of sets they have. But at least in this first season, it seems like that was just we have money for these sets and that's it.
And one of the episodes I specifically skipped, and it starred Molly Ringwald actually, is because she was playing a character with a visual impairment, and it was with her and Mackie.
Right? Yeah, that would have been awkward.
But lots of stars want to be on the show, and I loved it. So that's why we're going to talk about it. There's other random stuff I could throw out, but that's like the big beats.
Nice. So you said the show was really kind of beloved. Do you know if it got any awards or anything or recognition?
It was nominated for multiple awards. I can't remember off the top of my head if it won any, but that's one of the big cachets for it. And that happened, I want to say, around the third season or so, maybe fourth season, which is why they had so much confidence they would get it in their season, and why Rupert Holmes said, okay, MCL, make whatever changes you want, and went about the tour. But It sounds like they had no intention of doing it. They were just sort of stringing them along.
Right. I was wondering because, like, I know Beast Wars got like a weird, unlikely Emmy at one point. So we're in that kind, again, slightly interesting 90s, early 2000s time period of the Emmys were starting to evolve and grow beyond the small set of categories to encompass new disciplines. And so very unexpected shows and media were starting to pick up Emmy noms and even awards in unusual categories.
Yeah. Any other questions about the background of the show?
No, I think that's it. I mean, I have questions about like the time period the show is set in, because it seems like season 1 takes place over the course of 4 years or 3 years, but I know it's not quite right. So I didn't know if it was meant to be intentionally vague or what.
All right, so it was meant to be vague, so it'd be like late 30s, early 40s. So you know that World War II is like floating around because that becomes a very important plot point.
Right.
The closest thing you get in the first season is Mackie references as Wells's infamous Halloween broadcast of like October 1938 is being recent.
Right. But that's what confused me, because like one episode they talk about the War of the Worlds stunt like it just happens, but then spoiler for the end of season 1, we're on the cusp of America being dragged into, London gets bombed.
Yeah.
So like there's about 2-year gap between those two moments in history.
Well, America's not dragged into the war. There were Americans helping.
That's why I said, like, I corrected myself. It's like we're not two Americas being dragged in, because Pearl Harbor's not yet happened, but the London gets bombed in the early 40s.
Yeah. So it's purposely vague, but at the same time, it has, I would say, 1990s research.
Sure, that's fair.
Because in season 4, it is in which I don't think they did research on their own show. It's specifically stated that like Betty showed up on September 29th, 1939.
Right.
But then that doesn't match Mackie talking about that H.G. Wells event of 38 and Betty just showing up, because it all happened in that episode. So they're referencing her showing up a year later than what she should have in the first episode. So there's timey-wimey shenanigans.
Right. And that's what I was wondering, if the intent was, I don't know, it's just vaguely late 30s, early 40s, and we're going to pick and choose whatever makes sense. Then there's also very specific to me reference I'll get into when we get there, but I'll save that for when we talk about it.
Cool. All right. Season 1, episode 1, on air. We open on a Zenith radio, pulling back slowly as we hear a radio show. Then the hallway, before shifting to an on-air sign and into the studio proper. We see Hillary, Jeff, and Mackie acting as Mr. Foley does Foley work. That's a weird sentence I tried to figure out how to phrase, but I wrote this like 11 hours ago. They seamlessly transition between shows. Betty arrives to a very unimpressed Gertie, who is working the desk, before being captivated by Mackie's performance. And Jeff comes out, and she endures his advances in hopes of getting a lunch, only to be burned by Hillary's wit and left stunned in the hallway.
Right. And it's an ensemble sitcom, right? So like on one level, this is all pretty straightforward. You have your viewpoint character coming in so that she is a character other people can explain their dynamics to, so that the audience can understand what's going on here, right? So on the one hand, it's the I know what this bit is doing. On the other hand, we get introduced to 6 or 7 characters in like 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Yeah.
It is super efficient.
And you get a solid glimpse of like each of their personalities, how they interact. And not only that, it also, in case you're not familiar with the 1930s radio, you get to see a radio performance occurring, which becomes a recurring trend. But for the first episode, you see them doing the thing, which if you don't know radio, it would be a totally new experience.
And one thing that I liked I realized it was a reoccurring bit for the show is so like a lot of shows of time period, there's about a minute and a half of credits. There's no cold open, so you start the episode with the credits playing for about a minute and a half, and then the last credit plays, the music fades out, and then we start to get the radio show in progress before the video on the screen transitions to the studio. And in this first episode, we also spend more time moving through the hallway of the studio before we actually see the actors playing it. So, like you said, for people who are not familiar with audio drama, they actually get like 30 seconds of actual audio drama, even though there's visual stuff happening on the screen. And that seems to be a recurring trend, at least in the episodes I watched, of you get just a few seconds of just pure audio of the actors before the screen changes to whatever we need to show you first. So you're always getting a tiny bit of audio drama every single episode, which I think is great.
Yeah. And I love how quickly the dynamics are established. Like Gertie is grumpy but professional. You get Betty, who is wide-eyed, enthusiastic. Jeff, who's a little bit of a lech. Hillary, who is bitter but incredibly smart. And Mackie is just kind of like your everyman, like quickly establishing all those characters.
He is the character actor.
And okay, every time I hear that theme song, it makes me smile. I'm going to put it out of the way now. There we go. Okay, I'm going to jump into it unless there's something else you want to do.
Well, the one thing I was going to mention is this was the first time I realized this is one of these sitcoms that doesn't have a laugh track.
Yeah.
And I'm always a bit conflicted. Like laugh tracks are largely passe now, so we don't usually use them at all for comedies. But I felt like, at least with this episode, the people making it weren't entirely sure if they were going to get a laugh track or not, because there are pauses after the punchlines in this first episode. Like there's room in the performance for a laugh track to be inserted. I noticed that particularly at the very start of this episode, because like there'd be a line and then like a short pause where no one's saying anything, and I was mentally filling in a laugh track. After this episode, the other episodes don't do it, so I think like it was maybe just a artifact of the pilot. But I noticed it specifically in this early part because she's making a joke about trying to eat, trying to get some food. And specifically during this introductory section, there's lots of some make a quip, and then there's a bit of silence, and then another person will say a line that those kind of pauses wouldn't normally happen in this kind of dialogue. And again, they cut out through on, but like I felt like it was this is where they put the laugh here if they had laugh track.
Huh. So I never really thought about that. Part of me is curious though if they're also now teaching the audience what to expect watching the show, because
maybe
a lot of this does feel like 1930s dialogue. It's pretty quick, it's snappy, it's like on point, back and forth, and maybe the pauses are to teach people like this is where you should laugh if you like that joke.
Maybe that's a good point. Because I remember thinking like there aren't many non-laugh track sitcoms around this time period. This came out what, 97, 96? So I'm trying to think like I don't think Murphy Brown had a laugh track.
Wasn't Murphy Brown like 92?
Yeah, I'm saying like there aren't many at this point. So I could see a path where this gets pitched to AMC. It's like, oh, we're gonna do a sitcom about a radio show, and it's okay, cool. We'll just do it like a normal sitcom, and then in the course of making it, it's like actually this works better if we just don't have the laughs. And then, but by the time they made that decision, maybe this episode's for long. But to your point, like I could also see the logic of there's so much this show is doing it's differently. It's different, not only from a '96 perspective, but even from now, right? Like even today, the show would have to educate its audience to get into the basic premise of the show.
Yeah.
So that I could see a valid argument for you're used to laughing at these points in time, so we're going to leave space for you to laugh, so you don't miss a line of dialogue. But as the show goes on, like I said, like later episodes specifically don't do that. So I noticed it more rewatching this. I was like, because the second time I watched this episode, I was like, oh, I'm seeing there's gaps here that I wouldn't see in later episodes.
Very cool. Jeff hypes up how intimidating Victor's going to be, and he takes Betty to see Victor, and we get a shot of like the actual control room for a change. And you've got Victor and unnamed engineer, aka CJ. I think he gets a name drop later in the season or second season. Till then, he's just unnamed person working there.
Fair enough.
And Betty and Victor quip back and forth for a bit before Betty finds out her internship is in fact unpaid from the contest she won. She's taken to meet Mr. Giannetti, who is a current writer who is well behind in creating scripts. We get a little shot of Mr. Eldridge explaining that Mr. Giannetti hasn't written today's script, much less tomorrow's. They have an encounter with Mr. Giannetti, and in the end, Betty and Victor go back to his office. That's where I'm pausing there for a very specific reason.
And it is such a simple gag, and yet I think you maybe have the same resonance. Like we both know the history of pulp writing specifically and how time crunched it often was. So like it was a historically relevant joke, but it's also an extremely simple joke to get people to the audience. A very simple problem. This woman is hired as a writer. She realizes that she's not getting paid, but then is forced to quickly write the script that the existing writer has not done. And so it's like it's a pretty simple concept for a set of jokes for a pilot for a sitcom, and yet I was struck by going, that strikes as extremely true for a late 30s small network.
Yeah. One of the things I love is because I paused halfway through their office scene. It's like when she finds out she's not being paid, she's like, "But I won your contest," and he goes, "Yes, your script had a lot of potential." And she's like, "It was perfect in every way." And then he goes, "Let me read it to you," and like reads it to her. And you as the audience are thinking, "Man, that's good. That is nice. What's wrong?" To get the revelation that like, that is incredible. That is 30 seconds of silence on the radio.
Right. And it's funny because when I was watching it, having made audio, I was thinking the exact same thing. I'm like, no one's saying anything and there's no sound effects in there. And so when he points it out, I was like, that is a fair note. The minor spoiler fan in the episode, she turns it around and proves that that is a valid thing, because there is also space in audio design for people not talking to communicate mood, but that was not a common technique in the late 30s era of radio that we're talking about. It around the 40s, it starts to get a little more sophisticated, but we're not quite there yet. So again, like this is people writing these scripts are clearly very passionate about this era and this media, right? These are all jokes that if you know this stuff, they are even funnier because you do know this stuff, rather than like say shows where they make fun of computers and it's like, but you don't know anything about computers, and so it's like, well, I know about this stuff, so that's not actually funny. These are people who know so much about it, they can therefore make fun of it in a very specific way.
Yeah. And to point out, we've even gone and we've met an entirely new character who is our station manager with a different dynamic than everyone else. And we're probably about 15, 20 minutes in, but we've met Victor, met Janetti, we get more Mr. Eldridge. We've like expanded our cast. I think we even have a little bit of Eugenia saying a couple things by now. So there's a full cast of characters in under 20 minutes, full blown dynamics on the already off on the ground and running.
Right. And is this the part where Mr. Eldridge gives a speech about the magic of radio, or is that later on this episode?
I was about to go here. This is Victor's speech about radio. Mr. Eldridge does his in the next episode.
Sorry, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah. Because you were talking about the Eldridge criticizing your script. I thought it was part of that scene, but I was wrong.
All right, let's do this. Victor explains the magic of radio to Betty, who sits amazed and agrees to stay even though she's not being paid. Hillary gives Betty yet another sick burn before Mackie and Betty bond on her way to the writer's room to get the other pages. Once back in the room, Betty finds Mr. Giannetti dead. Victor tries to revive the writer while Betty searches for more pages. Any pages to give the performers to no avail. He sends her to help the actors, and she provides them her original pages that Victor said were silenced, and prompts Mackie to recite Shakespeare, a sonnet they did in the hallway that they monitored previously, and directs Mr. Foley's sound effects to amplify the silence, saving the day.
Right. Yeah, and this is just a great bit because it's we don't start, but like in the middle of this, we have I guess Mr. Eldridge talking about this is why we love radio, and obviously, like Betty also loves it because that's why she entered the contest and why she moved to kind of be a writer. But even though we have this cast of characters who are, as far as we could tell, heavily burned out, and in one case, mildly dead, we realize the reason why they do it is because they all love this in their own way. And so even when you have the gag of the two actors trying desperately to do a love scene with 0 pages, at no point is anyone like, screw it, I'm quitting, or like no one gets mad and stops the process. Everyone is deeply invested in making sure this thing happens in some form, or even though they're all on very different pages on what should be happening, and that's the humor of it. Nope, everybody from the sound room to the actors all across the board, everyone wants to be there and making this thing.
And yes, and the big part for me is like, because that's why Victor's speech is the one that I gave at the start of the show, like his explaining it to Betty to get her buy into it for everything that he sees. And one of the reasons that I love radio so much is that it is in fact your own motion picture to mine. And when he was talking about Captain Amazon and he saw himself in that role, I can tell you as a Black person, radio is one of the things that I could always see myself into roles. And that could be one of the reasons why I love radio so much. It avoids, or at least to some extent, removes some of the sanitation that you would see in the visual medium because it is all audio and you don't have to adhere to like a specific budget to typecast a certain type of person to do a certain type of thing.
Right. Which will be relevant to the next episode we talk about.
Yeah. So funny how that one got chosen.
Weird.
But Jeff does, and I love this, like when all the pages are gone, he's playing the kid, he nopes out to the side to watch them and laugh the entire time. So he's not under the pressure, but he's still part of the team. There's like watching in amazement. And when Betty comes in, they all start doing their own bits to help. So no one's left to not help.
Right. And they're under a lot of pressure, but you can also tell, like you said, with the Jeff line, or the Jeff bit, there's a lot of ribbing people and pushing them into circumstances because they're so overpotentiated out. This also plays out like once they get through the love scenes ends. Mackie is like, now 30 minutes for organ music, and then the organ player suddenly gives him a look like, what the fuck did you just say? Purely visual, there's no line because they're on air. And again, it's the like that kind of ribbing is like, okay, these people have worked together a long time. They trust each other. They may not like each other all the time, but again, they're all here to do this thing. And it was something I appreciate is that for a sitcom that is so much about a verbal medium, there's a lot of purely visual jokes in this show.
Yeah.
Because they can't always give one-liners if they're on the air, and so there's lots of body, posture, body acting, facial expressions that give jokes in a way that I wasn't entirely expecting when I first watched the show.
All right, let's wrap up the first episode.
Yeah.
Afterward, Hillary is ranting at Betty and Victor about how her script damages her character of Daphne for something she's done for so long, while Gertie is fielding multiple calls about how the audience loves the show, and then how the sponsor calls to love the show. And before she leaves, Hillary sort of shifts tones about how Betty elevated the show and even calls her by her proper name before leaving. And we get both Betty and Victor confronting Gertie, who admits to having made up all the phone calls, but she's the one that has to listen to the shows all day, and she liked it. And we end the episode with Victor offering Betty part-time pay for a full-time job as a writer.
Mm-hmm. So it's you're getting now some money as opposed to no money.
Which I think makes a great first episode, because I sound biased from the start, but it introduces people to the concept of radio, introduces you to the characters. You get Betty's journey into her role, establishes a whole bunch of things.
Right. And like I said, we kind of mentioned it, but like part of the shtick is that Betty literally pulls the page from her script that Victor rejected and inserts that into the conversations happening. And so that 30 minutes of silence becomes something that Victor has to acknowledge. Okay, that was actually really compelling audio drama because it wasn't actually silence; it was sound effects and music.
Yeah.
And so it was a really good way of showing that she has new ideas. So she's not just doing the same thing everybody else does. She's going to bring a new perspective into this well-established set of characters, which is something important to do for a viewpoint character, right? And so, but especially historical shows like this, often how that is done is some form of, and they're able to see the future that we recognize. Briscoe County Jr. does this for comedic effect, where Briscoe keeps anticipating the future of things that already exist in our modern world, right? But that was an on-running joke of Briscoe County Jr., right? Other shows do that unironically and badly. This is something more subtle, where it's like Betty is anticipating the future of audio drama, but in a very small step forward. But also showing that she has new and fresh ideas that as we walk into this environment, the station's about to implode, right? Like, again, the writer is briefly dead, but also massively behind on. He lives, by the way. We didn't cover that. He does survive.
He got better.
He got better. So like, but he, as much as Hillary was pissed at her, Hillary was previously mentioning that she felt like the soap opera story they worked on was getting stale, and that she wanted. It's like everyone was kind of getting frustrated with their job, and so Betty ends up being the character that gives everyone a breath of fresh air, which is again what you want from your viewpoint character. So it for a formula and a structure that is extremely obvious for the kind of sitcoms you want to make, it is surprising how well it adapts to this unusual concept, and B, how the writer and the actors elevate it slightly. Like it's even though I see the actual structure, and like I was not surprised by anything that happens from a structural perspective, individual moments were always surprising and enjoyable throughout the whole episode. So like it's okay, we have the structure, we have the notes, but now we can bolt stuff onto this. Like, let's whip through all the characters in 5 minutes, and in a very funny and interesting way. Like just the Hillary and Jeff sniping stuff was just endlessly funny, and to your point, feels very authentic. It feels a lot like what's the sitcom of the married couple that you love? I can't think of the name of it.
Nick and Nora.
Yeah, Nick and Nora. It feels very that
Thin
right.
Man.
So like it's a lot of let's do this but better. Which as I was watching it, I was like, I can see why the show did really well and has a huge fan base, and also B, why AMC had no fucking clue what they had.
It's almost like Sleepy Hollow, like The Emperor Smith, season 1, episode 6. We open on a zenith again with Hillary, Cecilia, brand new cast member. I think she shows up in episode 2, and Mackie acting as George Smith, an aspiring actor, delivers a buttery order to Mr. Eldridge, who asks him any new gigs. George explained he's done all the black roles that all the roles that black performers are allowed to get. And Betty explains that the Lord Bramley role is going to be premiered today on the show, and the sponsor is there to see it. Mackie chokes on a nut, but is saved by George. Unfortunately, Mackie loses his voice in the process. In a panic, Betty tries to impersonate Lord Bramley herself. It doesn't work. They have Mr. Eldridge try to very funny extents, and needing a replacement for the role with no other choice. We pause, Eddie. What do you think so far of the opening?
You would think that a radio program would be much more careful about the food and drink they give out to their performers. For exactly this reason. But otherwise, no. I mean, it is a genuinely good bit. I was a little surprised that the writer was going to, when he started talking to George, I was like, oh, please don't make him like the old racist, because I like these characters, and they didn't, right? He was very much like, oh, hey, how's your acting career going? Showed genuine interest in George as a person. Surprisingly, even more than the rest of the cast. There's like actually a bit that's funny, but a little awkward, where Betty's like, who could we cast to play Lord Bramley? And looking at literally everybody else in the room except for him. And at one point in time, she looks at him and then tries to do it herself, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a funny bit, but also says something about Betty.
Yeah. And one of the things I love even about this bit is how you were saying, Mr. Eldridge says that he could put in a word for George at the radio station, and you see George get excited for like an entire beat and then goes, no, that's not realistic. So you have him go through that entire journey, Mr. Eldridge being supported and realizing that that's still not a possibility for him.
Right. And so I had not watched up to this point previously. I watched like the first like 3 episodes, and my hazy, this is a couple years ago, so but you probably know better than I do, but my hazy recollection is the first 3 episodes are still pretty sitcom heavy. Basically, comedic thing happens, characters get wound up by the problem, they find silly ways to try to solve the problem, that fails, and then eventually they succeed in a surprising way. That's sitcoms.
Yeah,
right?
and they introduce like new characters, which you may have noticed in those episodes.
But I did not realize this was also a show that was going to introduce dramatic scenes. And so I saw George, I was like, okay, it's the 90s, they're probably going to gloss over this. But then like within minutes, like, no, there's all the rules I'm allowed to get. And then afterwards, like you said, like George gets visibly flayed. Like, I'm not going to allow to do that. I'm like, oh, they're going there. Okay, well, I mean, it's around the time of Deep Space Nine, so maybe it's just in the air at the moment. Like, we're allowed to talk about these things. So I was just surprised, because this is a sitcom, and what I knew of the show at that point in time was that it was very heavily a sitcom. I was not expecting to have such a strong dramatic through line in the episode.
So I mentioned the Molly Ringwald one earlier. The Molly Ringwald episode happens before this one. So you essentially have a character with her visual impairment, and it's like a Mackie love story, because Mackie's always wanted to be that. But it deals with like, and it's her explaining to him what all that means to her and why radio was important. So you get more dramatics in that episode too. And then this one follows directly behind that one.
Right. But I'm glad we watched this for a couple reasons. One of those is this sets me up better for the 2 episodes that are going to follow for expectation purposes.
And the beat I love that's so minor is that Betty, when she's looking for people, runs out, Gertie, where's Jeff? He has an appointment. An appointment with who? She's like a gym teacher. Is she an actress? No. Boom.
Right.
Which is important for the secret that we know that's revolving around Jeff and Hillary.
Right. Which is an interesting subplot, right? Because like episode 1, it's the impression you get is that they're married, but the marriage is on the rocks. Right. So this episode, I was like, okay, it's very clear that Jeff is sleeping around, and this is a known thing. So I'm like, so in my head, because I know too much, I was going, is the reason why I'm not divorced is because divorce generally has, at this point in time, landed very badly on the woman. Um, and so she doesn't want to go through with that, and so Jeff gets to do whatever he wants to. But I'm like, that kind of makes me not like Jeff as a character, because like Jeff's just this pound dog. I lined up later in the season. Oh, there's actually something way different going on, so it's a very slow burn for that
Yeah.
subplot. But one thing the show's doing really really well is that, like we said, the pilot episode, like all pilots do, set everything up, but also, like you said, have to train the audience for this time period, the social mores, and also the art form they're all playing in. It could have just kept those and felt like we have enough to balance to worry about that, but no, it's starting to already play with those expectations even inside of season one. So like I was like something else. That's one like something else is going on between Jeff and Hillary, because it's a funny line, but it's also like that's too. There's not. She's mad about other things. She's not mad about this as much as she's been mad about other things in the previous episode. So what is going on there? So even though I was like, as a savvy watcher, I was like, something else is going up here, but I don't know exactly what that is yet.
And in some of the episodes we skipped, there's a big flirtation between Jeff and Cecilia when she shows up. And you'll notice that Hillary gets very mad, though, when it's people in the station.
Right. But because of the first episode, it is unclear whether that is because he is flirting with another woman or if it's because attention is being taken off of her.
Yeah. Like, good writing. Lord Bramley sound effects, and we see the camera pans down to footsteps stepping slowly up, and then we hear a voice booming out into the role of Lord Bramley, and shock, it's George. Hillary is captivated by his skill. Victor easily deals with the sponsors concerned about George and Hillary in an interracial relationship on air. After the show, Victor reassigns roles, giving George all of Mackie's roles and a few more, much to Mackie's very sad-looking face. When no one says he won't even be missed. Jeff has a difficult conversation about a black serial that they've been doing, very similar to Amos and Andy, where he's playing a black character and the voice he expects George to do. And then sudden realization of decades of racism hit Jeff all at once. George takes him to task by dipping to the stereotype he was dancing around asking for, while Victor lets Betty know she's in charge. He has to go on a trip to DC regarding some sort of secret assignment.
I do want to talk about the Jeff and George scene, but that's later. So I want to talk about the earlier stuff first. We do this in order. Like the pullback to George in the role, it was played like a surprise. It's not really a surprise, like partially because I know you picked this episode, but also even within the structure of this, like the whole joke was literally anybody but George could do this role. So like obviously it's gonna be George's role. So like it wasn't a huge surprise. But what I loved was how Hillary seems to be captivated almost in spite of herself. Like she's a little mad at herself for being so captivated by him.
Yes.
And it very much struck me as like there's been times where I have consumed media either by friends of mine or just people like I respect and appreciate, and I get a little bit mad at how good it is. Right? And it's like, I love this. I'm so happy for your success, but I'm a little annoyed at how good you are. And I felt a little bit of that vibe with Hillary in watching him, because it could have been so much the, oh my God, he's so gorgeous, so beautiful. It wasn't that. It was Hillary instead going, you're really good. And I'm a little upset about that. And I don't know how I feel about that. But in the moment, I'm just enjoying it.
Yeah. And I love the fact that like all the actor in the cast are like, we don't care as long as you're good. It has like that.
Right. Yes.
It's that competency porn that we always talk about that's so essential.
Yeah. Or as we also talk about the effortless inclusivity.
Yes. And that's what it is for all of them on stage. You do get like Cecilia's, I don't know what's going on. Let's just roll with it.
Right. But again, I brought up the Hillary one because like when I first saw it, the first few seconds, I was like, is this going to be the white woman falls in love with the black man shtick? Especially because it was right after the heels of her being mad at Jeff flirting thing. But it's not. Again, it seems to be purely professional envy as opposed to lust. And like, cool, we dodged that particular stereotype.
which is staying constant to her character from like episode 1.
Yes.
And I do love the fact that when George is getting roles and they talk about Shakespeare, Hillary automatically goes, "Let's do Othello," and he goes,
"Yep.
Why is it that I never get offered roles like Julius Caesar? Why is it always Othello?" And
yeah,
she shrinks back. She doesn't say anything else. There's no quip. There's just
yeah. And again, right after that is the Jeff and George scene. So like back to back, you have George making really good points about the kind of roles he's allowed to get. And again, it started for the episode of like saying, "I've done all the roles I'm allowed to have," and so George is not aggressive, but he's just like, "I would like to do different things, but I can't," you know. And like you, I loved Jeff awkwardly trying to explain the racist comedy thing script that he had, and especially when he's like trying to give a note to George, and George is very clearly visibly misunderstanding him. Right? George is like, I'm giving you a chance to walk this back," and Jeff kind of sees the trap but still steps into it.
Yeah.
It's again, this is a case of where the actors are doing great physical acting. So like I can see Jeff's thought process as he's delivering these lines. And I can see George's thought process as delivering his lines. It just shows you the quality of acting is happening for, again, a comedy about radio drama is really, really surprising and good.
And I've been in George's spot in similar situations like that so many times.
Sure, yeah.
It is heartbreaking and funny and everything all at once, even for me to watch it, because I know what it's like. We also get the point I didn't bring up is that Victor gives Mr. Foley time off so Mackie can do all the Foley work. And you get the ongoing gag of Mackie not being amused or having to do the Foley work.
Right. And again, like, at no point do you ever get the impression that Mackie is mad because a black man took his job. It is just Mackie was like, I was so excited to play Lord Bramley and now I can't. So I am frustrated that somebody, it could be anybody else, you have the exact same reaction if anybody else is playing this role. So it's a thin line, but even though Mackie has almost no lines in this episode because of his throat being injured, you still get a very specific slice of resentment that lands extremely well.
So I'm curious, though, is it that or because Mackie potentially thought this would be time off, and instead Mr. Foley gets time off and he has to keep working?
That may be too, right? I was looking at, to be fair, I think it may be a little bit of both, right? Because certainly at this point, it seems like he's like, that was my role kind of vibe. But then you're right. In this chunk, you also get George playing the other roles. And there's a throwaway line about, we don't need Mackie at all, which Mackie is in the room for, right? And that's funny. But you're right. I'd forgotten about Foley can just take off. But so yeah, it could be a few different factors. But again, none of that. George's race is never a piece of the equation, which for a guy who's not playing any lines at all.
Yeah.
And again, this is only second episode. I didn't realize this. Something I retrospect. I did not get that Foley not speaking was the joke. So when I'm thinking back to this episode, when I was preparing to talk about it, I realized Mackie is now doing all of the jokes that Foley would probably be doing in this circumstance.
Yep.
So there's another meta joke happening there too, on top of all this other stuff. So there's a lot of layers happening for this kind of sitcom.
All right, I have to pause and ask, because if anyone watches this, they may know this, but do you recognize Mackie, Eddy?
I swear I did, but I don't know from where.
So, would it help if I told you that he was a video arcade tycoon?
Tron?
No.
No, that I don't know where it's from.
Would it help if I narrowed it down even more by saying that he was the villain who opposed a young black man just trying to get by in the world?
No, it's not helping me at all.
What if I even added on?
Why don't you just tell me
that Lord Julius happened to be in this movie, and his favorite phrase was "show enough," and Mackie Bloom was a villain in The Glow, The Last Dragon. Come on, Eddy. I gave you you don't know The Last Dragon?
I the last time I
Oh,
saw Last
Eddie.
Dragon was 15 years ago.
Oh, Eddie. We're so gonna watch that movie. It is so bad, but we're so gonna watch it now. He's like the main villain who owns like the video arcade.
Ah, okay.
Oh, we're watching. Oh, you gotta see
God,
the glow.
imagine a time when the villain arcade was a viable, or arcade owner was a viable villain description. I mean, geez.
They still are. We've seen Marvel comics. We know arcade is deadly.
Well, yes, but arcade is different. Like arcade's like I have a theme park that's all based around murdering people, and I think that's hilarious.
That's why. All right, never mind. You know what? We're gonna do a new season of my X-Men '97 game that we did last time, and I'm gonna put arcade as a villain this time because I made him up. It was almost arcade last time.
I know. You didn't do it.
All right. Tess, the station press agent. Now I just want to talk about arcade villains. Tess, the station press agent, tells Betty how everyone is loving the show and how her job has never been easier. And they have a journalist outside, Walter Snell, and he wants to ask questions. Betty says that may not be a good idea. Tess says, of course it is. But when she sees George, she says it's a problem. George admits to getting used to this type of treatment, and that's likely not the best thing, and agrees to stay incognito until Macca recovers. To escape the building, George uses Sneal's racism against him and literally walks out of the front door.
Which it's funny because like I've seen that exact move done in a couple of shows now. Specifically, my favorite version of that is Lupin. Just because they're trying so hard to find this mastermind, and Lupin just puts on a high vis vest and walks out the front door, and all of the white cops completely miss that it's him. So it was great to see another version of that same beat. It's like I didn't realize this is a trope. This is a trope I really love.
It's a trope that I've actually used in Cthulhu Confidential before when I was writing for that for Langston.
Nice, love it.
I love it. So Tess, who you see here, if I remember right, you will never see again.
Oh, really?
We're not the show.
Sad.
I don't think you see Snell again after this episode either.
Oh, well.
Anything for here? I've got a couple of things I may touch on, but I just want to see if you had anything before I delve into those points.
Honestly, I mean, this is really a lot of it is just the journalist trying to get in. This did make me realize that I've forgotten the writer's name.
Holmes.
Yeah, whatever. He's not as addled as he is letting on, and I don't know. I would be curious to watch more of the show to realize kind of what his deal actually is, because like he's sharper than he wants people to believe him to be.
Oh, you mean Mr. Eldridge?
Mr. Eldridge, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I want to bring up Tess's line because when Betty says they're all okay with George, and Tess quips back, "Well, you're all actors. I'm talking about real people," which underscores like the acting thing from earlier that we've been watching the whole time.
Right.
And she is a person that. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, I also felt like that may have been also a reference to how actors are much more accepting of homosexuality around that time period too.
Yes, love it. Tess is also the person that talks about the interracial relationship and how people aren't ready to see that. And George even quips back that people, because they make a comment about Charlie Chan, and then he asks, when has Charlie Chan ever been played by an Asian person? So it's like reinforcing the constant stereotypes, enforcing that Hollywood continues to do to all marginalized people, like constant link right there. And it's all like episode 6, Eddie, just like, boom.
Yeah. And again, this goes back to, these are people who, which is why I get a little frustrated about the time disparity a little bit, is because these are people who know the media landscape of this time period, right? Like the Charlie Chan reference is a very specific. It's not like obscure information, but like, you know, especially in the 90s, you couldn't look up Wikipedia and say, "Hey, tell me, you know, on Charlie Chan thing. Like these people who know Charlie Chan movies, watch them, realize they were played by a white actor, and realize there were repercussions and consequences for that decision.
Yeah.
So like they know this time period and this media really well.
And 2 more points. Betty tells Snell that he sort of vanished like the Invisible Man, which is hilarious given the fact that George walked out in front of him, and Ralph Ellison, Invisible Man, is literally about a black man and how white society doesn't see him as why he's effectively invisible. Like,
oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that, actually. That's good.
My sad news here is that the actor Howard Rollins died of complications of cancer in that December of '96.
Howard Rollins played George.
Yeah.
Oh, that sucks, man, because he was good.
Yeah. Let's finish out the episode. The following day, Betty sues the sponsor as George is snuck into the station, as did Snell, trying to discover him. Even under the white journalist's watchful eye, George performs his parts until they manage to lock the journalist in an office. George is allowed to just act for a few more hours. Snell jumps back in, and they lock Snell in the harp case that George showed up in. Mr. Eldridge gives a speech about radio and how it doesn't matter how old you are, how you look, or anything else. George informs him that he got an offer from Hollywood. He's not super excited about it because he'll be playing a butler while Clark, now I'm not going to misquote the lines, but essentially he's going to still be forced to play in subservient roles, even in Hollywood. And he'd have a choice of either acting as a butler or being a butler.
Right.
WENN has been the only place that he could do any sort of role and be anybody. We end with Hillary and George performing Othello.
Right. Which I do want to talk about that in a second. But again, like George performing the lines in front of the reporter is just a further extension of the initial joke I like, which is that, a black person in servant's clothing or support role clothing is invisible to certain white people. And so like literally George is doing the lines in front of him, although his back is turned to him. And Snell's logic is, I hear his voice. It must be a different microphone somewhere else in the building. Right? It's like he cannot accept the thing that's right in front of him. He'd rather think of a more outlandish possibility.
Every time.
And it's both really funny and also very poignant at the exact same moment, which is great. I loved it because like George is being fantastic, right? He's just sitting there pouring tea while just doing these lines so effortlessly. And the other actors are all playing along with this. So like it's a great bit of comedy of like this the stupid journalist like, I don't get what's going on. While he's just so smooth about everything. So again, like it's really funny, but also the joke only works. The joke only works if that racism is explicitly acknowledged, which was a fascinating way to kind of do the climax of this episode, because it isn't just, oh, we're gonna deal with this topic and then have fun sitcom hijinks. The sitcom hijinks require the racism to be acknowledged before they work.
Yes. And it's so well done. And the other beat is the only reason Snell gets to stay is because of the secret that Hillary and Jeff have. And he brings it up as to blackmail them, and they agree because they don't want their secret to come out. So it's constantly reinforcing that larger secret. And you keep, as an audience member, you're thinking, what the fuck is this thing if it's this big? Because they both want to help George, but they don't want their shit out in the open.
And I'm glad that was a Rob's B plot, because again, I started off the episode going, God, I really don't like Jeff, but then like this comes up pretty quickly. It's like, oh, okay, there is something else going on. I thought there may have been something else going on. So having that pop up here is a good way. Okay, now I can end this episode feeling good about all of the cast again, which is, again, especially for mid-90s sitcom, this show is clearly not doing every episode goes back to status quo dynamic. But certainly you should feel the same about the characters at the end of each episode. So it's not serialized in that regard. By the end of the episode, you should watch the next episode feeling more or less the same about the characters you did from the previous episode. And that's very important for this specific era of television.
And my last point for the episode is, did Mackie really lose his voice? Because at the end, after all that, you hear Mackie say in full-blown voice, like, bravo. So did Mackie really lose his voice? Because Mackie would have known about George's struggle. And even when he was in there first time when talking to Betty, he was like, sort of throwing off cheesy lines of how he could do Lord Bramley. But then George saves Mackie's life. Essentially what happens.
I genuinely had not thought about that possibility. That does cause me to reassess my initial opinions of how he was acting during the episode. But that's a really valid point, because like I said, George did save his life, so maybe Mackie on the spot came up with this. And we have seen in at least the 2 episodes we've watched so far that Mackie's extremely quick on his feet as a thinker.
Yes.
So yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but you're absolutely right. Mackie could have just been faking it to give George an opportunity. I, at the time, had chalked it up to, haha, isn't it funny that actually turns out Mackie's voice wasn't damaged at all the whole time? He didn't realize that he probably healed because he wasn't talking. And it's, oh, turns out you could have done it the whole time. Ha ha ha. But either one works. The joke works either way. And I think your way is actually a better way of interpreting it, frankly.
Anything else about that episode before we move on to the one that I specifically chose for Eddy?
Which I appreciate. No, I do want to talk briefly about Hillary and George performing Othello. I'm a little conflicted about it, honestly, because the show went out of its way to explain that he specifically wants to do other stuff besides Othello, and then Hillary doesn't badger him into playing Othello, but kind of implied that she really wants to play opposite him in Othello specifically. So, like, because the rest of the show had done such a good job, I feel like the intent is George is doing this as a thank you to her. Right? And that's how I want to interpret it. But it's still a kind of a weird way to end this episode, where the entire cast is so supportive of George, and then they do the thing that he said he doesn't want to do.
Yeah.
So
I'm right there with you. But it did such a great job up to this point. I let that point go.
Yeah. Basically, that's where I was doing. I was like, I was watching, I was like, but then I forced myself getting, well, I think George is probably intentionally doing this because, again, Hillary was so keen. She really wanted to play opposite him, Othello. So, like, I felt like that was I'll do this for you. But a line to that effect would have really helped that ending a lot better.
Yeah. I would prefer if they'd done something else, but
I agree, but something.
Armchair Detectives, which is season 1, episode 8. We open on the Zenith with Jeff and Mackie portraying Sherlock Holmes and Watson as the camera works its way into the recording room. Hillary, as a working girl and a broken watch, solves the case, while Betty and Victor are in a heated discussion about the missing warden, who is a surprise guest. Time ticking by. Betty answers a call that suddenly goes dead after someone says they're in danger. Finally, the pair greet the warden as Betty takes a dig at the Pittsburgh Pirates needing the rain, as then Victor, having to go to get photos developed because Mr. Eldridge shouldn't go out into the weather like that. The warden gives Jeff Sherlock a chance to prove his skills, which he fails at, and is provided a sick burn, and the actor... You know, I'm not going to make the joke. The warden crushes Jeff's attempts and admits that he's in fact an escaped convict and pulls a gun. Boom. So, okay. Eddy, part of my problem with doing this is I know the show so well. I have notes written, but then as even I'm reading them, my mind's like, I could throw this in instead. I could say this instead. Right. So part of me thinks I shouldn't put anything up, but then that would not have been fair to you. And then it's like, I have to listen to Chris. I can't. Is he going to make another joke? What's he going to do? So,
right, yeah, I focus entirely because this helps me to kind of orient myself in the episode. So I appreciate that, but I also understand your problem. I get you.
I could probably quote this show almost verbatim, at least for the first season or 2.
Wow, nice.
It's like I said, it's comfort food. I could do much the same for Psych.
Do you want me to get into my Sherlock Holmes nerdity now, or should I just not bother with it?
No, we chose this episode for your Holmesian nonsense.
Right. Okay. This episode existing potentially causes a very minor timeline problem for the show. Because if the impression seems to be that they are homaging Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce, especially
Yes.
with the very upper class Holmes and bumbling Watson, right? Except Rathbone and Bruce didn't start their show until 1939, which means either it was playing they were starting their show at the same time this version of the show was running, or this takes place later than that. But as we've established, it can't be that much later because of how the timeline lines up.
My thought would be that the H.G. Wells bit was a mistake, and they tried to retcon it in season 4 by saying Betty showed up in September, like 1939, which means this would be later, closer to like 1940, where that could have potentially happened. I think that was probably a retcon they were doing, but that's me giving a show I love a lot of credit. So
sure, no, right. The truth is, no one cares, right? The reality, it's like if you're going to do an episode of Sherlock Holmes, it's gonna homage Rathbone and Bruce in some way, shape, or form. And they do make and the reason why I even started thinking about this is because the comment about the photos is that specifically they said they were taking publicity photos of them in costume, which is why they happen to have costumes, because they want to promote this new show. The Armchair Detectives thing is new-ish.
Yeah.
And so the Holmes and Watson bits are probably going to be advertised in the paper as an ongoing new serial by WENN. So the answer I've come up with, and I think it fits within the aesthetic of the show, is that Rathbone and Bruce did exist, and WEN was too cheap to pay the license fee to replace the show, so they're trying to remake Rathbone and Bruce cheaply in Pittsburgh.
I could see that. We've established they don't have much of a budget already. It's an ongoing thing for the series.
Right.
Or we could be even like more American and say that maybe they thought an American accented British accent would be more welcoming to their Pittsburgh audience than an actual authentic British accent.
It's funny you mentioned that because I'm actually listening to a podcast right now, and the conceit of it is that there are two detectives that live at 224 B Baker Street, and they are the detectives that constantly get outdone by Sherlock Holmes and Watson, who never appear during the episodes. And it's they're queer characters, and so it's and also weirdly vulgar. It's actually a very fun comedic show, but it is a bunch of Americans putting on British accents. Like all of the iTunes reviews are, this is a great show, but as a Brit, these accents are fucking terrible. So like, there's actually some valid point to you of people saying it's like, people don't want actual British actors. They want Americans paying to be British actors to make them feel more comfortable. It's like that's a potentially valid way of doing it. But like all of this is just society. Was that good?
No. Part of it was like a joke, but also part of it is me remembering that like the Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce World War II movies hit later in World War II than this point. So that's even a joke for that.
Right. And there's another joke. There's actually a Jeremy Brett joke happening here too, with Jeff thinking he's just as good as Sherlock, because Jeremy Brett in the 80s rather infamously tried to live as Sherlock to better embody the role. And it was potentially one of the reasons why his health failed, is because that no one should try to do that in their real lives. But Jeremy Brett was very much a method actor. And so after several years of playing Sherlock Holmes, he started to eat badly and he slept badly and smoked. And he had other medical problems, but some people have implied that may have also taken a toll on his medical condition. So like Jeff thinking he's Sherlock Holmes because he's read some Sherlock Holmes scripts does also track, right?
Nice. At least there was not a Peter Cushing Holmes reference. All right.
Hound of the Baskervilles.
Mr. Foley is literally creating fog in the studio. Eddie, we've already established the camera's gone. Like
Yes.
the photos are done, but he's still making.
Yep.
I love it. It is so bad, but I love it so much.
It's like at first I was like, why in the hell are they dressed up? They're doing radio. And then they again the throwaway line about the publicity photos. So like you're right, all that becomes a joke of like they're just so excited to do costumes for once that they're doing way more than they need to.
And the other thing is, while Jeff is seducing all of his pieces, he is literally saying everything about a prisoner. I think the only reason he doesn't come to that conclusion is that he already knows he's a warden, so he's putting out clues to make himself believe he's a warden. Like that's
right. Well, I actually hadn't thought about it, but that's a good point. Like Jeff's observation skills are fantastic, but he's as a person he's someone who likes to please people, right? And so his own character flaws are a problem for that. So it's really cool to see that it's not just, hey, let's do a fun Sherlock Holmes story, although it is also that, right? But this is a continued evolution of Jeff's character, which it turns out is going to be relevant for the final episode we're going to talk about today, too. So,
yeah. My last bit is Hillary's joke, which happens in a second. She's no more blonde than I am. Love it. Love it.
Yep. Great joke.
The warden takes Cecilia hostage, and the cast quips with him about who the shooting order. He admits to breaking out so that they could solve his case, which they did wrong last time. And Mackey's, you're Larry Looper. He was a convict who was convicted for poisoning Carlton Killian, and he wants him to find a different who in the who done it. And they set the stage as Betty nervously talks to Larry. Jeff reads off the 6 possible suspects, and each performer acts it up in turn. Someone put rat poison in Killian's champagne. Larry walks Jeff through it as the script provides a baseline of jokes and a bunch of other very, very specific beats, one of which mentions the acetate disc for the newfangled German player recorder. Cecilia is awesome. And as it has this amazing spiderweb background for her, while Mackie hams up his death scenes. The lights go out. There's some comments about don't touch me there. Victor takes Larry's gun and finds out that it's not loaded. He lets him know that they've not been broadcasting for over the past hour. Jeff deduces who the actual killer was based on no champagne left in the bottle. It was Miss Craven.
Right. So this is one of the few times where I noted that what's happening couldn't really happen the way the show says it could. Like, because they're trying to reconstruct the mansion in the studio, and so we just have microphones everywhere, and they're walking between microphones. And we go, hey, your audio would be screwed. The audio doesn't work that way. The wires would get you. No, it doesn't work that way. And I just didn't care. It's like, okay, we're gonna do Clue the movie on a shoestring budget in this radio show sitcom, and I'm here for it. I don't give a shit about how it could work or not because it's not what this episode's about, and I'm fine with it.
Oh, I don't know. It's there's a magic to it from how it's assembled, walking them through, and the amount of script that's there. But then you get Larry, who is literally trying to explain to them everything that happened. Right. There's just magic to the show, and the fact that it all boils down to Jeff knowing how much champagne should be poured out of the glasses, and the bit about radio and acetate is used for recording, which they would know being radio people.
Right. It was their specific knowledge of radio that helped them to solve the case, which is fantastic. And again, this earlier point, like Jeff's observational skills are really, really strong. All of the information he presents is accurate. It's just he is struggling to put them together in a certain way because, again, like he feels like he has to please people and present a certain image. But in this point, because that image is competent radio actor, he's fine with going to the conclusion that's presented. So like it's a neat little character arc for Jeff, which I was not expecting when I started this episode. The other thing I really liked about this whole thing is there's an interesting bit because Larry comes in with a strong New York accent and or New Jersey accent. I'm not through the nuances of the accent, but certainly that area. And he quickly revealed, as I said earlier, that he's a convict, that he's escaped. And then he mentioned that he was the butler. And there's like a couple of half jokes. Like people are like, really? You're the butler? And Larry gets very defensive about it. And so it's an interesting bit of a rare moment of American classism based on accent, which you don't see very often. But because of his accent, they're surprised to hear that he was a butler. And it's like, why can't a guy like be a butler? And it's purely because of his accent that people are having a secondary thought. So I thought that was really interesting.
So yeah, I don't necessarily have a lot more. I just like the episode. It's solid. It's them figuring out the beats for it. Yeah.
Even though we didn't cover Cecilia's introductory episode, she was not really massively present in the previous episode. I really liked her in this episode because her playing the wife and the sniping that happens as a result of that is just, I loved it. It was so great. So I was like, okay, I even though I don't know your character very well, I'm now on board with you, having seen you in this environment.
Almost forgot. What did you think of Mr. Foley's dialogue as the son?
This is why I realized that was the gag, right? Is because it's he starts to, there's a point where he has to say something, and then the show makes a very funny joke around why he's not actually saying anything. I'm like, okay, this is ongoing. This is a running joke. I get it now. It was fantastic. It was great because he opened his mouth like and then it doesn't happen.
And the last bit for the entire episode is Jeff is so in character that he tells a police officer to arrest Hillary. Right. And they end with Larry saying, I can do myself in the show, as Mackie says, I'll play Larry this time.
Right. And I was like, nah. But I think back on something effective, like, I've already got the character down. And I'm just like, you're still you do the guy you're playing. It was again, a really good moment.
All right, the last one. World of Tomorrow, Season 1, Episode 13. We open on the Zenith as a space show is being performed. 50 years into the future, 1990! The World of Tomorrow. The sponsor is pleased, but Scott Sherwood, a.k.a. the new Victor, drops Betty into an office with him, saying they had a pitch for a brand new show before, would you look at the time, leaving. Well, you know what? I'm pausing there because you don't know who Scott is. I'm going to take a beat.
I was a bit surprised by the status quo change. I was like, who the hell is this guy? Okay, he's clearly an owner. Something happened in the past few episodes, so that was interesting. And told me that I didn't know the context for it, but told me that this was a show that's going to have lots of cast changes. Now I know why, is because they would find better paying jobs, which is, hustle. You don't get to get the hustle. I get it. So that was interesting to me. But I do love when these kinds of shows dabble in retrofuturism.
Yeah.
Right. Especially for a sitcom, because like, okay, we could do a lot of mileage out of how silly people in 1940 thought 1990 was going to look like. But like, even the actors doing the bit at the beginning seem like they're rolling their eyes a bit at this script. Which was a great bit of commentary of like, listen, we don't buy this stuff. It was very funny.
But that is exactly how the radio shows were back then. If you listen to the old sci-fi, like 30s and 40s radio shows. Because it was never necessarily like hundreds of years in the future. It was decades in the future. I think it was supposed to be different.
Right. It's like in the year 2000, we'll have, everyone's like flying cars and rocket backpacks. But yeah, but like also, it's funny because like 50% of the predictions are weirdly accurate and 50% are just utter batshit. Like I was reading a while back, it was one of the science magazines, I think it was like around 1950, was predicting what would happen in 2000. And they accurately predicted video calls and a version of Twitter, basically kind of a social place where everyone can put their thoughts and other people can read them very easily. But they also assumed that we would have like flying houses and also we'll have colonized Venus. So,
why Venus and not Mars?
right? Right? It was very specific, like, not just we were apparently Mars was just a known, like, Mars by the 70s, no problem. That Venus was gonna be the big challenge by 2000. I don't know. It was weird. It was very weird.
I don't know. So that's Scott. What do you think of Scott right now? I'm curious.
He's an asshole.
Very close to it. As I was saying, he left Betty in the middle of a pitch that doesn't exist. Then he goes and he shines. Man, I'm really thrown off by how much I know of this show. I need to not know shows that we cover going forward.
No less.
He starts to shine Hillary up and then negs her about her Southern accent and asks if the character can no longer be Southern for a new sponsor that sells Yankee something. Yeah, and disgusted, she says, the character I've done for like years. He goes, yeah, say it with a joke. Victor calls from London for Jeff. Mr. Eldridge has a very confusing conversation about who's calling who. And Victor has asked Jeff to come work overseas with him for the military. He asks if he can talk to Betty. Then the line goes dead. Boop. Betty pitches a sponsor on this amazing new idea. It's kind of the Wizard of Oz. Scott comes back amazed that she came up with something, and he keeps spinning plates until the sponsor is sold on a brand new program next week. That's what my original breakpoint was.
I'm guessing that Scott has come in some form of, we need to get more money for the station, so this guy's going to try to get us a lot more money, and so that's why he's pushing so hard to bend to sponsor interest.
So I want to say Scott shows up probably in episode 11 or 12. He comes in because Victor's like going off to London. So Scott comes in and says, like, I am Victor's hand-chosen successor as station manager.
Right, okay.
So Betty and everyone works under him, and he's just trying to make the station monies.
Okay. Yeah, because the conversations he's having here are very much in line with, like, in video games. It's like, hey, the publisher wants you to cut this entire storyline and put in more pew-pew because shooting is what sells. And then flounce off. Very similar to conversations that were had during the fourth Matrix movie at the very beginning,
Yeah.
So like these all they rang true, even though I don't like Scott. It's like, this is exactly the kind of thing that someone would come in of like going, just I don't care about artistic integrity, just do this thing because that sponsor will give us a fractional more amount of money.
Yeah. And an executive's executive.
Right.
One of the beats I love for the show is Mr. Foley makes most of all of his Foley work look incredibly dangerous, and he's concerned when he does it consistently. Like this one for The World of Tomorrow, like all the lighting effects, like he's like, maybe not.
To be fair, like this is the first time I'd really seen that gag, but it had very strong Beaker from the Muppets energy.
Oh God.
Which I like.
And my other gag that I like is that when they talk about how bad the line is, Cecilia makes a joke about having heard 1 million military lines before.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which goes back. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say it was just a good line.
Because it goes back to during the war, which then brings up another weird sort of point in time for like the show being timey-wimey, is a lot of women would like give essentially like hope to soldiers overseas. Like that was a big thing. They come, they do dances, they do everything else. Marla Dietrich was like really big in having the parties and everything else. But then that infers that Cecilia has been doing that for a while, but that can't work because the U.S. isn't at war yet.
Right.
So there's
now
that temporal disconnect.
I could be wrong, but I agree with you. I think this is before the USO was a thing. but I believe American performers still went overseas before this time, just to for morale for uh, allied troops.
Yeah.
Because I want to say Josephine Baker went over to London around this time period.
Josephine Baker would have already left. I think she was potentially in Paris by now. We're in like late 30s.
Right. So like I do feel like some actors were doing this stuff before it became a little more kind of formalized when the U.S. entered the war.
I would agree. My only thought is though is that she just said she came back from New York and she's a Pittsburgh radio actress.
Okay, no, that's good. That is a problem.
But like I said, I don't care. It's a great line in the show in general.
It is.
But we're talking specifically like now we're approaching it as our we're analyzing it and we're talking about time issues. Like that's one that sparks for me.
No, totally. Like you and I are in the place of like we have a deeper knowledge of media from this exact time range that most casual viewers are not going to have.
Yeah.
Right. And so like we're going, maybe this should have been like a year or two in a different direction. Right. These are not like wildly inconsistent things. It's just this should be more 1940 versus 1939 kind of stuff. I mean, so I think for what this show is doing, especially considering most of it sounds like it was shot like it sounds like they wrote the scripts and then started shooting it and then shot it in 4 days. So probably they're writing scripts like in 24, 48 hours.
Yeah.
So they're probably going, I don't know. I think it was around this time. Cecilia was doing this. Sure.
In the green room, Hillary and Jeff talk about him going into harm's way. And we learn the secret that they aren't really married. Well, not married anymore. They were married and then they were divorced quickly in Mexico. She pleads with him not to go. Later, Betty and Scott get into it about Jeff leaving. Scott schemes, and Betty says they just need to say goodbye to Jeff and let him go. Beside bedside manner has Mr. Eldritch sitting in as Mr. Singer, Mr. Senior Singer, and starts bombing immediately as Mr. Eldritch can't quite get the gag. The entire cast tries to get by without Jeff in various ways. The World's Fair broadcast is being carried all across New York, which the cast realizes is their chance to get super famous, and they decide to act rather than do it by the numbers. Betty, in turn, confronts each of them to no avail. And I'm pausing there.
They aren't really married one was not a twist I expected to see coming, honestly. Right. Now, in my defense, the twist I did think was going to happen, I realized retrospect would not have been done on AMC in mid-90s, which was that one of them was gay and it was a false marriage. That was my thought.
Yeah.
But I was like, no, they're not going to do that in AMC in 1996. So I shouldn't have thought that was an option. But like, they bring up a valid point, which is like, we are so well known for being married that it would hurt our careers to not be married, even though we cannot stand each other. And then immediately that is followed up by the fact they do still very clearly care about each other.
Yes.
So
which I think is why it works.
Yes. We have seen how much they've been sniping at each other for presumably 12 episodes now. And so the reveal that, oh yeah, they're actually divorced, happening at the same time as Hillary going, well, actually, I still do care about you, at least on I don't want you to die level. He's absolutely right. It works really well because the mystery of what was going on with them suddenly doesn't matter. So they underplay it. It's still satisfying to see, but it's very underplayed because what matters is Hillary and Jeff's relationship as people, not their marital status.
Yeah. And it comes out that if Snell had really exposed their secret, that would have been devastating to both their careers and possibly the station itself.
Right. So it was interesting because, like, in retrospect, they were correct. That would have been a devastating secret, but not for the reasons that I thought of when I was watching it for the first time.
Yeah.
Right. I was like, oh, it makes perfect sense why. So there's a little bit of them telling each other things they already know, but it was absolutely necessary to get that point across again because they're kind of throwing it away. They need to get to that bit quickly because that's actually not what matters anymore. But they still have to get through it. So I was like, it's not awkward. The actors pull it off really well, but it is a little bit of, as you know, our careers will be ruined. And it's like, well, yes, I know because I'm right here. I was there too. It's like there's a bit of that, but not too much.
There's one beat that I'm not a huge fan of here is that we established in the first episode that Betty sees Mackie is able to do any roles, and Mackie's
Right.
want to do romantic roles consistently. And she undercuts Mackie completely here for the drama of the episode by saying, "Your character roles are what are like the benchmark of the station. We need them." When he says, "I could take over just romantic leads," and she goes, "Nope."
Yeah. I was wondering if there had been a character arc that I had just missed that led to that. Because I was the same thing. I was like, that's completely the opposite of the first episode we watched.
No, not really. Because Mackie's constant thing is he's trying to be in more romantic leads, and primarily they don't happen because Jeff's there. And so when the other time it was going to happen is when George was there. But now there's no reason for him not to have done it other than it doesn't work for the beats of the episode.
Are you familiar with this? Is not like Archie, so it's not. Are you familiar with the term flanderization?
I don't think so, actually.
Okay. Flanderization, it comes from The Simpsons, and it refers to a character that starts off with a fairly nuanced character concept, but over time, through the course of a sitcom, that character just becomes more and more a bunch of tics and catchphrases and stereotypes.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that's what happened here, is that Mackie, because it's in the section 2, a lot of Mackie's reason for acting out in this part of the episode is because he wants to be seen as someone who can do romantic leads, but he did that in episode 1, but by episode 13, he's known as the wacky character actor, and so they inadvertently paint him back into a corner that he was never in to begin with,
Yeah. I could see that. Now I'm trying to think through the later seasons, and like most shows, though, it starts to shift less from their characters, and there's more drama and scripted stuff, but there's also counterbalanced by zaniness. And I think a lot of the zaniness goes to Mackie.
Right. If you look at a lot of long-running sitcoms, sitcoms specifically, this happens a lot in, you'll see that characters start to become fossilized into very specific dynamics in the cast. They never really leave those after a while. I think this show probably, if I were to watch the other 3 episodes or other 3 seasons, I should say, probably has less of it just because it is more inclined towards drama, and therefore there's reduced chance of that because they have to have character arcs interiority for that drama to work. But also, if there's a moderately high churn of cast members as opposed to most sitcoms which have the same cast for long periods of time, then that also allows for more dynamism. But if you look at, like, say, The Office, for example, right? Not a great show for a lot of reasons, but it's a long-running sitcom, and so the characters you see in season 1 are moderately different from the characters you see in the final season, but also the last 3 or 4 seasons, the characters are basically the same because the audience expects them to do and say certain things at certain times, and so they start to do and say things at certain times because that's what the audience expects, not because what their characters would do anymore.
I'm going to assume you mean the U.S. Office based on the number of seasons you implied.
Yes, the UK Office is only had 2 seasons. Not even that, maybe. It was not a very long running show. Yeah, I'm talking about the US Office.
Betty confronts Scott in his office, who isn't listening to their broadcast at all, and that everyone is doing an okay job. She says they need Jeff, who is broadcasting actually at midnight that night, his first broadcast, before returning to the control room. Victor and Jeff are broadcasting while Gertie, Tom, and Scott listen as the pair report the bombings in London. Scott is moved and has Mr. Foley mic the broadcast, and then the WENN listeners hear Jeff's broadcast about the bombings as the sound of explosions can be heard in the distance. And they're broadcasting to Pittsburgh and New York. Betty has a cast keep singing the World of Tomorrow song in unison for a short while. Later in the green room, Hillary is almost overcome as they continue to listen to the London broadcast from the green room. Then the broadcast suddenly stops and goes dead. End of season 1.
So usually when we do these recordings, these podcasts, especially if it's a show I'm not familiar with, I will just watch the episodes we talk about, and then we talk about them. I started watching the beginning of season 2 because I had to know how the fuck that ended. And after about 5 minutes, I realized they were not going to immediately answer that question, so I paused it and said, "I will save it for another time because I don't want to watch another episode and get it confused with all the other episodes we've watched," which is the reason why I try to watch these episodes. But I was just like, that is a hell of a cliffhanger.
Normally, I don't leave it on the final episode of the season, but this is my favorite show, and I want more people to go watch it, so I did that on purpose.
Yeah, no, and it was good because like this is definitely the most dramatic episode. Admittedly, the sitcom plot, I it's okay because the sitcom plot is, as we kind of alluded to earlier, Cecilia, Mackie, and not Betty, Hillary all want some have all heard something or have been told something, and they want something different for their acting careers, and so they're trying to use the opportunity of the nationwide broadcast to promote their own acting careers over the unity of the broadcast, right? And again, with the exception of Mackie's aside, because as explained, that is retrograde. But these other two characters, they logically extend from the characters as we know them. So like these are natural things. And it does lead to the amusing bit of each actor has a solo part in the song, and they take those solo parts to do something that's completely different from the character they were given. And to have Betty each time going, "Stop, what is going on? Why are you doing this?" Right? So like it's a funny B plot, but the A plot of the bombing is so serious and so dramatic. It feels a bit weird. And so for like 80% of the episode, I'm like, this feels really discordant. And then when they hard shift from the bombing to the song and they're in sync, I'm like, that was fantastic because it's one of those moments, a bit like with the Knives Out movies talked about, where like you're not quite sure where it all connects together, and suddenly just clicks into place right at the climax, and it's like, oh, that is perfectly structured.
Yeah, and I didn't go into the depth of the conversation they're having about the bombing from like Jeff and Victor, but they're literally talking about how bombs work. Like if you hear them in the distance, you're fine, but then when you don't hear it, that's when the fire person told them that you're probably in trouble, and then they go on talking about something else. And you have Jeff mention that we have like a weird moment of silence, and he mentions something else, and then it goes dead. Like that is beautiful. They set you up with it, so you know as long as you hear the bombing, you're good. And you hear bombing from most of their discussions.
Right.
Then it stops. He mentions it, and then they talk about something else. You think the bombing is actually over, and it's not.
And also, this plays off well from the detective episode because Jeff goes to London, he starts recording, and you realize that Jeff's actually a really good journalist. You know, his observation skills we saw in the detective episode serve him really well in this sudden journalism role that he's thrust into.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, a lot of the weird problems, minor problems Jeff's been having, not only with Hillary, but also with his job as an actor, is because maybe he's actually a journalist.
And it also gives you a chance to go and accent Victor, who is incredible and like super knowledgeable, but Victor does not relate to like the average soldier just out there doing the job. They need someone that can relate. So that adds to both their characters and it develops them. Even though Victor's now been gone most of the season after it. Like after last saw him, he pretty much dips out because he has like another job. He gets like another gig.
Yeah, admittedly, this did feel a bit like, especially because there's a new station head. I was like, oh, the day he had to wrap up filming, they went ahead, grabbed another room, filmed all this stuff with him and Jeff real quick in that separate room so he can go and they could just edit that stuff in later. It did feel like a bit like Unit B shooting, right, as it were. But it was a really good use of that structure. And so they're overseas. We don't see him anymore. We're only hearing him. So it was a great way to use that potential logistics conflict.
And it's the old, like I mentioned at the start, B5 trap doors for characters. The big thing for this is though that people come back and they have those doors for people to come back in through.
Nice. That's really cool.
All right. Eddie, what did you think of one of my favorite shows? Since it's my favorite shows, people know I'm going to love it. So my opinion is going to be like, it's awesome. Just watch it.
Right. I actually really like it. I went from Chris likes it, so I'll probably enjoy it. Again, I had watched a couple episodes and I found them enjoyable, but then just life got in the way, various things happened. I didn't quite get around back to watching it. And after this, it's like, oh, I'm actually a little mad that this was allowed to disappear for so long, right? Because it is, again, it's not. On one level, it's very easy to understand what it is. It is a sitcom about a radio station. It's not hard to pitch, but what it's actually doing, it is really hard to pigeonhole it. It is a fairly distinctive thing. Dramedy wasn't the same concept we have now. I mean, it didn't even have the portmanteau for it, I don't think, around 96. Like, so, like, this is a kind of a new-ish thing that people can make in a time period in a media that a lot of people were not going to be familiar with. It's a hell of a swing, and given the budget constraints, it has all the hallmarks for, well, nobody's watching us, so we'll just try some stuff, and then inadvertently getting a huge audience as a result, right? Honestly, up to the final episode, there's a lot of energy of, we're probably going to be canceled next week, so let's just do some stuff that we find enjoyable. And it was this episode, there was a confidence of, like, we can end this in a cliffhanger and we will get the season 2, right? No, we know what we're doing now, and we have confidence in what we're doing. But it doesn't mean that other episodes weren't confident. They were just more, let's cram it all in because we don't know how long we're going to get. So I am curious. For you, it's like, I'm assuming you've seen all 4 seasons, right?
Yes, I have.
Like, does the quality taper off pretty strongly, or is it pretty consistently high quality throughout?
So I enjoy it all the way through. You can tell, I want to say at the end of season 3, I think they start getting a bunch of notes, and those notes definitely, I think, influence season 4.
Okay.
So it's great. I love the entire series, but I would say, God, I'm trying to remember now. I haven't watched them all in a long time, but I want to say the first 3 seasons are my preferred season. Season 4 is still good, but it feels like they've got a lot of notes and they're trying to shift gears to some extent.
Okay. Yeah, because I was wondering if, like, this is, again, because it's a workplace comedy on some level. Like, there's a lot of options you can go with. So, like, it's a story that, or it's a concept that has a pretty strong amount of steam. But I could also see, like, if they continue to have a low budget, and if AMC was kind of lukewarm to it, and if they're constantly changing cast members, I could see why it could go off the rails pretty easily at any point in time during that.
So if I'm trying to remember, I think they only really introduced one more solid cast member, who is going to be Maple, but another cast member leaves, and then some people come. So the dynamics are constantly shifting. And like CJ, who I mentioned that does like really nothing in all the episodes you've seen, becomes more of a character in some other places like that. So dynamics change. The number of cast members stay consistent, but you lose people and gain people, essentially.
Right. Which is interesting. So that's another reason why I'm tempted to watch it, because it sounds like it's a show that's not reinventing itself, but certainly, like, because you have these new dynamics, it's allowed to try new things and go in slightly different directions each time.
And most of the characters get more and more depth as the episode goes on. Like, you find out more about Scott's story, which you have to. So, like, those sort of thing happens.
Because he is not a likable character at the start.
Eddy, if people wanted to know, like, what we're doing next week so they can prep for it, we're doing something else warm and cozy like this, sitting by a fireside, just us talking in our best radio voices, enjoying the time together?
You go into a deep melodious voice, and my first instinct was like, and now overseas, go into that Atlantic newsreel voice. But no, I've pulled a Chris. I had a plan here, and then at the next to last minute, I have changed it completely because I have a better idea. We are going to stay in roughly this time period. We're going to stay around the 1930s, but we're moving to Shanghai because we're going to watch a show called Detective L, which is a Chinese show in 2019 about a female police detective and a male private detective. So you can see why I was perhaps interested in the show. And we're going to watch the first 3 episodes because For some reason, the show has all the stories are three-parters.
Hmm.
So, it was either watch 3 episodes or watch 6 episodes. So,
Jeez.
we're gonna watch 3 episodes. It is all on YouTube. It is all legally free on YouTube. I will warn you ahead of time, the subtitles are a bit machine learning translated, so a bit of Google Translate-ish. They're not great, but I think especially because I know you're such a for history perspective, seeing what a Chinese show thinks of their 1930s time period, I thought would be really interesting for you. So
Yeah, it sounds awesome. Now you make me want to add in Spider-Man Noir just so I can do my Nick Cage. Yeah, see? I'm talking about like this. Yeah,
see?
yeah, yeah.
I still have not seen Spider-Man Noir actually, so
Yeah, see, Eddie, it comes in 2 different types. You can watch it in color, you can watch it in black and white. Yeah. So Eddie, if people wanted to contact you about Remember When or my bad Nick Cage 1930s accent, where could they do that?
you can find me at PuckSteady.com. That's where I am on Blue Sky. That's also where I am on my website. You can also buy my Phelps Puckmeyer game. Phelps Puckmeyer game about dogs, put in the far future, but they're fantasy. Or you can come to the Dr. Hugh Discord and talk to me about stuff.
And if you want to support me, you can go to my Patreon, Harlem Unbounding with Chris Feige. Or you can come into the Discord and hit me up with a, hey, Chris, I like Remember When too. Until then,